For almost the entirety of the offseason, many Detroit Lions fans have been praying, begging, hoping that Brad Holmes was going to sign kicker Jake Bates from the UFL once it was available for him to do so. And now they know that he is officially going to be a part of the Detroit Lions. And we're going to talk about it in this episode, folks. Stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions fans, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So, I'm not going to beat too much around the bush here because everybody knows about the news by now, or at least you should know about the news by now, and if not, you're about to know about the news. The Detroit Lions have officially signed former Michigan Panthers UFL kicker Jake Bates to a contract. He is going to be with the Detroit Lions. The Lions are going to be bringing him in for the training camp period and also for the preseason period. They're going to be putting him in direct competition with undrafted free agent kicker out of U of M, James Turner, and also with the incumbent kicker from last year, Michael Badgley. Now, this news right here is extremely big news. I know that for some people are going to be like, David, it's just a kicker. Why is this such big news? It's big news for a couple of reasons, and we're going to talk about it in this episode here. The reason why it's big news is because, number one, first and foremost, this right here is something that Lions fans for virtually the entirety of the offseason, ever since pretty much the UFL season got started for, the Michigan Panthers and obviously for the rest of the league, the Lions fans have been wanting Brad Holmes to go out and sign Jake Bates. There was a lot of clamoring, there was a lot of commotion once he went to Ford Field, kicked that 64-yard field goal that pretty much got everybody talking about. There were people that wanted to sign him right then and there. Problem was, as we found out, is that because since he already had a contract with the Michigan Panthers and the season for the UFL was going on at that time, we couldn't do anything until the season was officially over, meaning until the Michigan Panthers were officially done playing. Once that happened, then at that point, the Lions could officially try to sign him. But at the same time, so could everybody else. And let's put it out there for what it is. There were a lot of other teams that were really interested in potentially bringing in Jake Bates. From what I remember from reading from ESPN, there was also the Panthers that talked to Jake Bates and also the Washington Commanders, formerly known as the Washington Redskins, talked to him. But ultimately what happened was Jake Bates decided to stay in Michigan. He decided to sign with the Detroit Lions. And that right there is huge news for a lot of Lions fans because let's understand something here. I have said it more times than I care to recollect on my channel, but we as Lions fans have been perpetually spoiled when it comes to having good kickers. Again, we had Eddie Murray from the 1980s to the early 1990s. We then had Jason Hanson from the said 1990s all the way up to the 2010s. Then we had from about 2000 and I think it was 16 to about 2020 or so, somewhere around there, we had freaking Matt Prater. We had Matt Prater for about 5 or 6 years, something like that. The point of the matter is that between those three kickers, the Lions had like 30, 40 years of good, quality, solid kicking. The problem is that, as I've also said, ever since Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have taken over the Detroit Lions, they have done an absolutely stupendous job, wonderful job in upgrading and getting better at virtually every single other position that the Lions have, except the kicking position. Again, I talked about this previously. I think over the 40 or so years that since the time when Eddie Murray became the Detroit Lions kicker until about the time, when, Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell took over, the Lions realistically had about 6 starting kickers. Which, that's kind of an oddball thing to say because either you're the kicker or you're not. There's no such thing as a backup kicker, but you know what I'm trying to say here. The problem is that ever since Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have taken over, we've had the same amount of kickers, play for us within the last 4 years going into 4 years, pardon me, so the last 3 seasons in comparison to the last 40 years that we'd had with, Hansen, Murray, and Prater. So for a lot of Lions fans, they were like, dude, we have got to find a solid solution to the kicking conundrum. We have got to find a long-term solution. And for a lot of Lions fans, the biggest area of problems they were having was that the kickers we were using, how do I put this? It seemed like we just couldn't get the consistency from the 50-yard out range that we were wanting. Because it's like, hey, a kicker in the NFL now should be able to kick from 50-plus yards out almost no problem. It should be damn near automatic. And the problem is that of the kickers that we had, it was like, hey, if you're about 49 yards or fewer in, we can make that kick. But if it's 50 yards or out, it's not very good odds. And it was like, listen, a lot of Lions fans were wanting to see an upgrade. It's like, listen, I've talked about Michael Badgley in the past. Michael Badgley has a pretty solid leg. I'm not saying that it's the greatest leg in the world as far as strength is concerned, but it's like, listen, the consistency factor from 50 plus out is not always the greatest. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. And one of the things that Lions fans know particularly is like, listen, if you're in a tight game, where you are like literally separated by 2 points, 1 point, and you've got literally a minute and a half, you only got a timeout or two, and you got to try and drive, 75, 80 yards, you might not be able to get the full length of the field to actually score a touchdown to put it out of reach. You might have to rely on a very long field goal from your field goal kicker. Well, here's the thing. The guys that we'd had over the last 3 years, you really didn't have that confidence. You really didn't have that trust that if you got within about 50, 55 yards, that they were going to make the kick. That's why signing Jake Bates is such a big deal for Lions fans because, one, it lets them know that, hey, Brad Holmes actually, even though there's no proof of this, I'm guaranteeing you this is the way the Lions fans are going to look at it. Brad Holmes actually heard, he actually listened to Lions fans. He actually took something that they were wanting and he actually brought it in for them. That's going to make them extremely happy because we have to understand something here. Over the last, 2-3 decades, there have been a lot of Lions fans that have wanted certain players to get signed, traded for, brought in, whatever the case might be, drafted also as well. And it almost never seemed like we were ever able to get what we wanted. Now, to be fair, we should have expected that because we're not in the driver's seat, number one. But also, number two, those guys in the front office are going to know more than we do as far as what's going on and what the needs of the team are. Obviously, there are some exceptions to that, Matt Millen being one of them. But the point of the matter is that the fact that going out and getting Jake Bates, even if it's just a kicker, that right there is going to make Lions fans really happy because they're going to look at it like, hey, Brad Holmes might have actually heard what we said. He actually is seeing the things that we're seeing. He's bringing in somebody that we think could really help the situation be better. And it's like, dude, kickers don't necessarily cost a whole hell of a lot of money. You can sign a decent kicker for not a king's ransom in essence. So if you can go out and you can get a kicker for virtually next to nothing and he winds up being, the next long-term kicker here in Detroit, why the hell not? But the second thing that's really important about signing Jake Bates here is that let's just say hypothetically that Jake Bates, he goes into training camp, he goes through preseason, and he absolutely just completely destroys Michael Badgley and James Turner. He's just out there and he's just making these kicks left and right, and the Lions now officially keep him on their roster as their starting kicker. Now you have a guy who is 24 years old. He has professional football experience in the UFL. I'm not saying it's NFL level, but the UFL is a professional football league. So now you bring him in. He's used to kicking in Ford Field. We know that because the Michigan Panthers played at Ford Field. So you now have a guy that's used to playing in Ford Field. You now have a guy that has some professional experience, which is something that James Turner, the UDFA, doesn't have. And now you have a guy that we know without 100% shadow of a doubt can kick the ball from not just 50 plus, he can kick the ball from 60 plus yards. Again, this is a guy that in the UFL, he kicked not one, not two, not three. I think it was like 4 or 5 different kicks from 60 plus yards out. And again, he set the record this year, I think, in the UFL for 64 being the longest field goal. So it's like, listen, we now have a kicker that has the range that you can realistically put in the same category as Justin Tucker of the Ravens. Because Justin Tucker's longest field goal was 66, which unfortunately came against the Lions 2 years ago. Whatever the case is, the point of the matter is when you got a kicker that can kick from 64 yards out, it's like, dude, Let's just say the offense only gets to about the freaking 45, 40-yard line. You could still send out freaking Jake Bates, and he could make that field goal. That's the thing. Now, I know for some Lions fans, they're going to be like, well, David, that's in a dome. How about when he's actually out in the open air and he's facing all the elements? Listen, I would be willing to bet that so long as it's not super windy and so long as, there's a solid kicking surface, like it's not super wet or snowy or whatever the case is, he should be able to still maintain the majority of his range. We have to understand something here. Even if it's super windy outside or you have really bad field conditions, you need to adjust the parameters of what you can consider a makeable field goal. I guarantee you this, there are some kickers out there, they're going to be like, listen, if I'm dealing with 20-mile-per-hour wind gusts or the field is a freaking slop fest, I'm not going to be able to kick a 60-plus yard field goal because I don't have the conditions that are necessary to do it. My whole point is this. When you have a kicker like Jake Bates who can kick from 60-plus yards out, that gives you a weapon that now puts you one step further to getting to a Super Bowl. Because think about it. If we have a kicker that can kick from that far out, at that point, Dan Campbell can't use the reasoning of, well, I wanted to go for it on fourth down because I felt we needed to score a touchdown in order to win. It's like, dude, if you get to a fourth down and you're within Jake Bates' range, which is 60 yards or further in, you should be sending out Bates to kick those field goals. You should at least give the kicker the chance, not always be 100% aggressive. Now, understand what I'm saying. I still want Dan Campbell to be aggressive, but when it makes sense further to send the kicker out rather than trying to force it on like a 4th and 5 or a 4th and 6, let's be smart here. Let's be conservative. Let's take the damn points because we can score with our offense later in the game to make up the 4 points that we didn't potentially go for on that 4th and 5 or that 4th and 6. That's called being smart, and I believe that Dan Campbell over the last couple of years has learned that a little bit. Whether or not he's totally learned it, we'll find out in 2024. But the point of the matter is that you have to take a look at the situation. If you're like on the 40 or 42 yard line and it's like a 4th and 4, 4th and 5, just kick the damn field goal. If it's a 4th and 1 or a 4th and 2, and hey, you're going up against a defense that's not very good at stopping on 4th down, hey, go for it then. You've got two very competent running backs. Your short passing game is really damn good. That makes sense. Everything has to be weighed and balanced before you make decisions. All I'm simply saying is this. Now that you have Jake Bates in camp, now that you have that potential for him to be the starting kicker, you now have an option, should he win the job, to not always have to go for it on 4th down. You can take the points and still find a way to win games. And the reason also why I'm saying this as well, let's understand something here. Jake Bates is the only kicker in camp. This is pretty damn important. He's the only kicker in camp that actually has a multi-year deal, folks. UDFA kicker James Turner has a 1-year deal. Michael Badgley has a 1-year deal. You want to know what the Lions gave Jake Bates? They gave him a 2-year deal, which tells me this. The Lions are not just bringing him in just as like another body. They're bringing him in with the serious expectation, hey, you're going to compete for the job. And if you win the job is yours. Because it's like you don't hand a 2-year contract to somebody just to say, yeah, we're just bringing you in as a camp body. No, I believe that Jake Bates is in a pretty good spot to potentially win the job because you hand out a contract like that, he has, the backing from what he did in the UFL, and we know that the Lions are trying to bring in any potential, resource they can to make that jump to the Super Bowl, to win a Super Bowl. Yeah, the Lions are serious about bringing him in. They want him to compete. They want him to potentially win the job. But with that being said, I feel very good about this information. I know that there's a lot of Lions fans that feel good about this information. It's massive news. I consider it a really big move. I get it. It's just a kicker. But I'm telling you this right now. Do not overlook a kicking position because if there's one thing us Lions fans know, a kicker can help you win or lose games. And for us, when we've had really good kickers, we've won more games because of them than lost because of them. That's pretty damn important. And when you know that it's a razor-thin margin to win a Super Bowl or get to a Super Bowl, having a really good kicker might just be the thing that makes the difference. But Having said that, I'm going to end the episode, and I just want to say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past, you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed, you now had a chance to do so. Again, I highly encourage y'all to subscribe, but I also encourage y'all, please, 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 make sure you also turn on that bell notification icon as well, so that way you never miss any more content that I push out. I also encourage y'all to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody, anybody that you can. I don't care where you share it. The more we can share it, the greater the growth, the greater the channel can spread, and the greater reach it has. And because of that, I want to give a big shout out to one of my best fans that I have. His name is Dean DeGreer. You guys have probably seen a couple comments that he's put out there. He specifically mentioned that he shared my channel. He specifically mentioned that he shared my content with some fans that were really disgruntled with Woodward Sports. I don't know how many fans decided to subscribe to my channel because of it, but I wanted to give a big shout out to him because he's been with me for a long time, and I really respect what he did for me. And again, I'm not just doing that because of that. I'm just simply saying, hey, I am thankful for every single one of my fans. And it's like, hey, if you guys are out there, you guys are sharing, I want to give you guys some love too, no matter who you are. So hey, make sure you're sharing, make sure you're turning on that bell notification icon, because I'm truly thankful for everybody that I have. And if you guys do something that I can recognize, I'm willing to do so to give you guys a little bit of some appreciation and a little bit of airtime. But having said that, I hope everybody is enjoying themselves. I hope you all enjoyed the content. I hope you all are having a great day. Something makes you happy. Something makes you smile. God bless. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.